Welcome to our Portuguese Table podcast. I'm Maria Lawton, the Azorean Green Bean.
And I'm Angela Simoes, and we're just two chicks dishing about Portuguese food, culture, and what it means to be Portuguese.
So grab a glass of vinho or un copo de café and join us as we talk about our favorite foods, reminisce about growing up Portuguese,
and interview some of our community's most successful chefs and food writers.
So sit down at our Portuguese table.
Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Our Portuguese Table. I'm Angela Simoes, and Maria, you there?
I am here. Hi everyone, welcome. Very excited about today's interview.
Yeah, we have Antelmo Faria from San Jose, California. Hi Antelmo, how are you?
Good, how are you guys?
We're doing well.
Can't complain, honey, can't complain.
So we're super excited. I'm especially me, because you're from, my barrio, if you will, here in California, and you're one of the younger chefs and restaurateurs that we're going to be interviewing, and I think all of your success has been such a great example for the community, and we just can't wait to share your story, because we're super proud of everything that you've accomplished. Right. And parabéns to you. We're so happy for you.
Parabéns is correct.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it's for me, it's such an exciting opportunity to get to chat with you guys and share my story and some of my passion and what drives me to do this project with you guys and your listeners.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I know you have quite a story, and you're going to be opening up a new restaurant in San Francisco, which we cannot wait. But why don't you give us a little background on how you got started? What got you interested in food, and how did you start cooking and stuff like that?
So as a young kid, I was born here in the United States, but when I was a year old, my parents moved back to the island of Faria in the Azores. And so I was always surrounded by family and lots of food, and our house was kind of the hub where all our cousins and aunts and uncles would come over. And so I always remember there being food at a young age and me always being interested in it. But as I grew older, my dad, he always encouraged me to cook, and it was something I took to naturally. So I was always really curious in the kitchen and wanted to get involved and hands-on. So I started from a young age just being really comfortable in the kitchen. And as I grew older, it just really stuck with me, and it was something I was really comfortable with, and it was something that I actually enjoyed, and that was fun. So even as a young child, I remember going with my dad to the market in the island of Fayal and visiting the different stands with different farmers coming from Pico, bringing the island across the way and bringing produce, and meeting the butchers and the fishmongers.
That's wonderful.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, so it was always a very natural process.
I'm back in the Azores right now as you're talking. As you're speaking
really?
and describing that, I feel that I'm right back there with you. I am Azorean, I'm from San Miguel. But
okay.
the same, it's being there and being and all of that. So I can absolutely see myself there. Okay.
You paint a good picture, Antonio.
You are painting a very good picture. I feel very homesick right now.
So I know that you worked for Manuel Azevedo at La Salette, but was that your first food gig, or did you work somewhere before? How did that happen?
So that was my first, quote unquote, my first real cook job out of culinary school, where it was kind of more serious cooking. So I had decided to go to culinary school at that point, and really found La Salette. I almost went to Portugal to do my externship and to cook, but then I found La Salette. And what was really exciting about Chef Manuel Azevedo's food was that he was marrying Portuguese food with the kind of a wine country or kind of a Northern California sensibility. Right. But yeah, so that was my first real official post-school cooking job. But I had worked in restaurants before then, mostly in a front of the house capacity. I had been a server and a manager, but also had filled in little roles here and there helping in the kitchen. So I was already familiar with the restaurants and being comfortable being in that setting, but that was my first real cooking job.
That's awesome.
And how long were you there?
So I was at La Salette for 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, I remember you being there. Maria, you were trying to say something. I keep
No,
interrupting.
no, that's okay. I'm going back to Fayal, and I know we're going all over the place here, but how old were you when you finally came over from Fayal?
So when I came back to live, I was 12 years old at the time when I made the move back to the United States.
So your family came from Fayal to California, back to Fayal, and then back to California, correct?
Yeah, so both my parents are immigrants, and my dad and my dad's side of the family, they came from Fayal, and my mom's side of the family, they came from Saint George, and my parents met here. And
isn't that something?
Yeah. So my
nice.
parents met here, they got married, had me, and then when I was a year old, they decided they wanted to go back and raise their family in Fayal in the Azores.
Right. Now, do you still have a lot of family, and do you go back to Fayal and to Saint George?
Yeah, so my parents actually split, and my dad ended up staying in Fayal, so my mom came back here, and that's, eventually I came back to live, or I came to the United States to live with my mom and my brothers, but my dad was in Fayal, so I'd go back in the summers, my brothers and I, and spend the summer there. But other than that, yeah, I have cousins and aunts and uncles, and some of the family, it's in terms of my aunts and uncles have passed away now, but there's still a really strong connection there, and always, people to visit and a reason to visit when I go back.
Now, and again, back to the cooking here. So your first food memory, let's say the very first food memory you have, what is it? Where are you?
My first food memory, it's, that's really, really tough, but I remember I just remember being enthusiastic about food more than one specific memory, just as a child. So my mom always tells the story. So my dad, he was really interesting, and one of the things one of the businesses he had in Fayal was he owned a discoteca or a nightclub for a couple years. And so when I was about the age of 5, I had a birthday party, and I told my mom that I wanted to plan the menu. So
oh my gosh.
At 5 years old, I planned the menu, and I had all my favorite things on there, and I hand selected the guests. And
oh my goodness,
that's amazing.
I love it.
And the menu was like shishash and hamburgers, and I forget what else, but it was all over the place. But there was definitely a lot of good Portuguese flavors in there.
Wow,
that's very telling. You were destined to become in the food business
and in command.
Yeah.
To be leader, absolutely. That started early on.
Well, I think that's an Aries trait. I'm an Aries, and I've always been kind of stubborn and wanting to be in charge of the pack.
No, I think it's even more than that, honey. It's being it's in our DNA.
It's a good combo.
It's a good combo, but it's in our DNA. We are definitely leaders. We are definitely. Other people call it stubborn. I don't. I don't do that. We're just very strong-willed.
Well, I guess you'd have to be stubborn and have a sense of leadership to get on a tiny boat and go across the ocean and find new places.
You are so correct. One of the things that, Angela and I always talk about, and, and this is the whole thing about having this podcast, is to kind of like, this is who we are. This is who we are as a Portuguese people. And it took guts. It took guts and it has to be it's a specific person who picks up their family and moves them to a whole different country. And it's that discoverers that's in us. It has to be. It's a certain special breed of people. So, we're very strong-willed. We're very strong-willed. And we're also very proud of who we are.
Yeah. Well, and you see it even in the professions when people immigrated over here, whether they were a blue collar or white collar, a lot of people started their own businesses, right?
That's right.
So you have that leadership and entrepreneurship is, like you said, it's in our DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of that fear of going out and exploring the unknown, and knowing that you have an idea, and sticking to your guns, and following it through.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So beyond your first food memory, do you remember the first dish you ever cooked? Portuguese dish?
Portuguese dish. So I remember the first thing I ever cooked was pancakes. That was the first thing that it was kind of like my dad would put a little chair at the stove, and I would stand up on the chair and would pour the batter in the pan and flip it over. But then as I got a little bit older, I was allowed to start working the barbecue, and he taught me how to make his burgers, which to this day
Nice.
I still when I make them for barbecue, or if I'm barbecuing, I make them the same way. And so that was at a young age. But I really remember the first time that I really felt that people took notice of something I cooked was when I had come back. I was living in the United States, and I was 12, maybe about just close to 13, and my mom had a potluck for some coworkers, and I made calamari from scratch.
Wow.
So I was, so my dad, when I was in Portugal, I spent a year there with him, and he opened a restaurant called Adega Santa. So I spent a year with him. My mom came back to the United States, and my brothers were with her, but I stayed for 1 year before I came back with my dad. During that year, my dad opened this restaurant called Adega Santa, so I spent time working in the restaurant and helping around. So I got exposed to people cooking in the kitchen, and I felt more and more comfortable. But yeah, I remember being 12 and having this potluck, and I asked my mom if I could make a dish, and I bought fresh squid, and I cleaned it, and I breaded it, and I fried it and everything myself. And I remember people literally being like super impressed and being like, your 12-year-old son made this. And I think at that time I just have a personality. Like, I do enjoy, I guess I have a healthy ego, and I do enjoy that kind of immediate gratification of a job
The
well
accolades.
done.
Yeah.
And,
Sure.
and people like in the moment being like, oh my God, this is so good. We enjoy this. I played music for 5 years after high school in my previous life before cooking. And it's kind of the same idea where it's as soon as you put your product out there, whether it be it food or you're playing a song for somebody, the response, is immediate. So that gratification of a job well done, or people responding to what you're doing in a positive manner, is there right away. And I always really enjoyed that. But yeah, that was like the first moment where I was like, man, like making food is so cool.
Now, I keep hearing you talk about your dad. So it was your dad who influenced your cooking.
Actually, it was a lot of people. So early on, I was kind of, his little buddy, his little right-hand man. So I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time with him, and he did influence my cooking a lot. He really enjoyed food a lot. He was not a chef, but he was one of the most talented cooks that I still to this day remember. And he just loved all kinds of food, and different types of food, and different spices, and he also enjoyed a connection to a lot of the people that provided the food. So he was friends and knew personally the fishermen, and the different butchers, and the farmers that were coming into the
But
markets.
you know what? You just described, and I know at the time you would say, well, he never had the culinary training, but he was a chef. And because even now,
Well,
great chefs need to know the butcher, the fishmonger.
But I'm gonna interject, because that term chef gets thrown around kind of loosely nowadays, and somebody throws a great dinner party at home, and they go, oh, I'm such a good chef, And at the end of the day, look, we're just all cooks. The only thing that makes you a chef is basically you're the manager of the kitchen. You're the boss of the kitchen. You're also, for the most part, you're doing the creative side of the food, but the difference between a cook and a chef is really just you're the administrator, and
Yep.
that's really you're the kitchen boss. So I think the term chef, really kind of gets thrown around here and there, but at the end of the day, it's about being a really good cook and enjoying cooking and having a connection to what you cook.
Now, have you ever read Julia Child's book?
Which one?
The first one, if I'm not mistaken, because that is exactly what she says. Word for word.
Well,
that is exactly her thing to everyone and she said the same exact thing. It was pretty much word for word. Spot on.
So going back to your question, my dad was probably the biggest influence on me early on. But so many people in my family, my grandfather, he came from the north of Portugal, and he has kind of his own interesting story. But he ended up, he didn't necessarily have a lot of family, ended up in the army at a young age, as so many men in Portugal did. So he joined, I believe he was 17, but
Wow.
he ended up stationed in Fayal, where he met my grandmother. And they ended up staying there before they came to the United States in the 60s. But he was a tremendous cook. He was actually, just every bit as talented as my dad was. And I think that's where my dad got that sense of really being enthusiastic about food. But he brought something different to the table, because he was so, when I talk to a lot of people nowadays about Portuguese food, I always have this discussion where people, they have a tendency to think, oh, well, this is Portuguese or this is not Portuguese. And I go, a lot of times I often find that they're talking about Azorean food. I go, well, when you say that, do you mean that this is not Azorean or not typical of Azorean cuisine? Because that's a lot different than Portuguese cuisine.
Yes,
so my grandfather, he was from Famalicão in north, and just north of Porto. So his food, the way he saw it, and dishes he enjoyed, there was a lot of even variation on those from just typical Azorean cuisine, which I think most people kind of here in the United States, especially in the Bay Area, the Portuguese that are here. I know in Canada and the East Coast, there's a few more people from the mainland or continental Portugal, but I think most of the concentration here in California were from the Azores. So. But it was my dad, it was my grandfather. My grandmother was a great cook, and she always, came from a large family, and it was always a lot of food and sharing food. And then I had people like my godfather, Tony Lorenz in Half Moon Bay. He, to this day, he cooks the big feeds for the hall over there. He does the roast beef for the festa. He does all the crab dinners, all the fish fries and the mussels. And there was times that I'd go spend time with him in Half Moon Bay. I have my cousin Gary, who's a couple years older than me, and I would go over there. I would actually take the train to San Mateo and then the bus to Half Moon Bay. My grandma, my mom's mom, thought my mom was crazy for letting me do that when I was like 13. But my mom was like, no, Telmo's always been this kind of traveler spirit, and I just let him do his thing. And she had a lot of trust in me. But
wow, that is a lot of trust.
I would go spend time with my cousin and my godfather, and he cooked a lot and was fantastic. And he was the type of person, he cans his own tuna and grows favas and uses them fresh and then dries the other ones. And he had me and my cousin Gary, rototilling land and planting potatoes. So that was like such a connection to
our
the
food.
Source of food,
yes.
and this very kind of like old world style of like providing your own. So I've been so fortunate to encounter people in my life who really, it wasn't for the glamour of food or what food represented. And I think food nowadays has a different idea or attachment to it, and it's become glamorized. But really, it was for them. It was really a way to bring family together and bring friends together and have people
Absolutely.
have a good time and enjoy it. Was like, if you make good food, you put wine on the table, you invite everybody over. Formula for success. And
Success,
to this
exactly.
to this
Exactly.
day to this day, I really think that's how a restaurant should operate. It should be like, make people feel welcome, invite them
Yeah.
in, make good food, and put some wine on the table, and people will have a good time.
Yeah.
And so going back again, because I know I'm very Portuguese about this. I'm going to go all over the place.
That's okay. We're the same way. We're the same way, honey.
But my dad would be the biggest influence, because he really always had this, to a point, exaggerated belief in me and my abilities, and his confidence in me. And like I said, by the time I was 12, I felt very comfortable with every aspect of the kitchen. But then these other people just in my life, that my prima Maria Juge in Fayal, she was like incredible cook. Her food's delicious. She's the type of person when you go back there to visit, she would invite you over for lunch on a Sunday at 1 o'clock, and you would get there and it'd be for 3 or 4 people, and she'd have two puddings and 3 cakes, and she'd make bacalhau de natas and frango assado no forno and all these, and you're like,
Yes.
what army is showing up to eat this?
Yeah.
And she was just
And that's
so
your typical thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
and
So
it
if
was-
there was Chopped for kids on TV when you were 12, I think you definitely would have been a good candidate.
yeah, I think a Master Chef Junior or
Yeah.
Chopped.
That's
I think,
absolutely.
yeah. I don't know when this podcast is airing, and I can't really say a whole lot, but if people were to tune into the Food Network on May 3rd and watch Chopped, I think they'd have a lot of fun and be surprised at who they might see on there.
Really?
Nice. So
Okay.
This
You
will
know-
likely air in late August, but we will
we can
put the
switch
word out
things
there.
around.
Well,
We could.
no, it's okay.
Switch it around.
It'll just watch the reruns.
Right, there you go. So Telmo, I know we're on a time limit, and I want to be respectful of your time, and we can't have this podcast until we talk about your restaurant, Uma Casa.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how that came about. Why did you how did you choose the recipes? How did you choose the name? What can people expect?
Oh,
Tell
well,
us all about it.
you're assuming I have recipes.
Oh, I know you do. They might be in your head, but I know you've got something brewing.
That's why I love cooking versus baking. I would be the worst baker in the world, because you have to follow directions so precisely, and I tend to get distracted sometimes and want to kind of freestyle a little bit. But no, Uma Casa is really a product of just like everything that I've been sharing with you guys about how big of role foods played in my life, and connections that I had to certain people in my life, and just the way it's just the way it's always been something that I gravitated towards. So when I went to culinary school, when I decided to go, it was really with the intention of like, one day I want to have my own restaurant, and I want it to be a Portuguese restaurant.
Okay.
But I always knew that I wanted it to be different, that I didn't want to just do, super home style traditional Portuguese food. I always saw, at the time I was younger, but even before, about 10 years before I decided to go to culinary school, I would watch, Mario Batali on the Food Network and Emeril, and they already kind of did things in a little bit more modern light, and the way Mario Batali was moving Italian food forward and giving little twists and presentation and plating. I always had this idea of, I want to do Portuguese food, but my own way. So I went to culinary school. That's why I ended up at La Salette. Had an amazing opportunity to work with Chef Manuel Azevedo at La Salette for 3 years, and then just felt like I needed to, move on and explore different things in cooking. And also I was living in Sonoma and wanted to see different areas. So long story short, ended up kind of just randomly, my first executive chef job was of a Mexican restaurant called Tropisueño in San Francisco, because like when I came back from Portugal, I grew up basically essentially almost on the east side of San Jose, kind of in that little Portugal area, which is also close to a lot of Hispanic neighborhoods. So I learned to speak Spanish, and we had neighbors that cooked all the time, and I became enthralled, and just kind of, it became like my second love of cuisine and food, because it was such a dynamic cuisine and flavors. So I went, and that led one thing to another, and I ended up being executive chef of this little restaurant called Tacolicious.
Which is really delicious, by the way. That's a good name.
And that really like took off and opened up so many doors for me and provided tremendous opportunity. Joe Hargrave, who's the owner and now is just, I mean, beyond a working relationship, he's just one of my best friends in the world. He really introduced me to a lot of people and a lot of really good philosophies that I subscribe to in terms of this industry and how to be successful and how to do what you do and have ego and create and be an artist, but also how to listen to customers and their needs and to do something that is also what people want. Because there's a couple, so at this point, my two biggest mentors and influences in this industry are my first chef mentor ever, Manuel Azved, and then Joe Hargrave, who's more of the manager, operator, restaurateur type. But they kind of, in their own ways, shared a lot of similar ideas. But Manny was always like, you have to treat it as a business and be profitable. So don't be the best chef ever to go broke. It's like, because you can cook as well as you want or do whatever you want. If you don't run a successful business or your kitchen as a business, you will not have a venue to showcase your talents. So there was that. And then Joe, same thing, was just about giving people something they want, excited, inventive, but have it, be comfortable and great service and value and all the things that make people want to come back over and over. So long story short, it's about, so it's about 10 years in at this point, and I've just had a lot of experience, had opened 5 different restaurants with the Tacolicious group. And I just felt like I was at that age, that time that kind of kept coming back in my head to that original place of why I got into cooking, why I went to culinary school, why I had gone, worked the hours that I did and sacrificed the time with friends and family that I did and all these things. And, it was kind of my heartstrings were tugging at me to like say, hey, Telmo, like, you need to do this thing that you've always had this vision for and this passion and this project to do a Portuguese restaurant. So I left Tacolicious, not left Tacolicious like completely, because to this day there's still a great relationship there, and I have a kind of a chef ambassador role and so many tie-ins with that company. It's a great company that I love, but I needed to move on from the executive chef role of overseeing at the time was like almost 30 managers and 300 employees, to really be able to focus on opening Uma Casa, which is my Portuguese restaurant that I'm going to be opening in San Francisco. So it's kind of really just a culmination of this journey, and not just my journey as a cook and then as a chef, but really just my journey as a human being, because I feel like the story has so much more to do than just food. It's really an expression of my life and my story, who I am as a person.
That's I can't wait to try it.
So yes. So I guess I didn't finish explaining the rest, but so Uma Casa, Portuguese food. I've worked as a chef for 8 years in San Francisco now, and greatly influenced by the city and its chefs and markets and vendors and all. It's such an amazing food city, probably one of the top 3 in the world, in my opinion, arguably. And now I have an opportunity to do Portuguese food for San Francisco, in San Francisco, but also for the entire Portuguese community in California. And when people come visit from all over the world, I hope that they'll get the chance to stop in San Francisco and try what I'm doing, because it's really rooted in Portuguese history and my personal story and my connection to Portugal and the Azores but it's also got this kind of it's got this San Francisco sensibility to it. So a lot of focus on the sourcing of the ingredients and the sustainability behind it and the connection to the vendors and using things that are in season and making some of the dishes a little bit lighter and more vegetables.
Which is your real true Portuguese cooking. And that is
what it is. Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So I'm going to jump back because we've been doing this all day. So I hope the listeners are following at this point because I've been known to be a little long-winded.
Well, you have just been saying, I mean, Angela and I, for the questions we wanted to ask you, you were answering it for us.
Without us asking. Yeah.
Yes, which is great. And for the listeners, when they listen to this, I know I am so excited about it. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud that you are representing the Portuguese in the way that you are. And that's a beautiful thing. We're very proud of you. And I can't wait to visit. And
you open.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait. And to be there at your restaurant, I cannot wait to be there. Because I just now want to have something. I feel like I want to cook with you. God darn it. It's like, oh my God, I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Well, I mean, we can make that happen. I mean,
we could.
Yeah, I love cooking and cooking with other people. And
and you know what's funny is, my whole family is from San Miguel. We're now going back centuries. We've always been in San Miguel. And the only other part of the island or any other island that I have is Santa Maria, which come to find out it was like my grandmother's grandparents came from there. So we're talking centuries ago.
Yeah.
But I've never, every time I go, I just visit St. Michael. And what I do and what I cook is all about St. Michael because that's all I know and all I have around me. And I've always wanted to go to Fayal, and I will be. That's one of my next things is going to the different islands because even though we're Azorean, we all have our own little specialties in each of the island. So, and around here where I live in New England, the majority of the people around me are either from the continent or from San Miguel. So it's not like I can really enjoy the different tastes of Fayal. So I know if I go into your restaurant, you're going to showcase that.
Well, absolutely. There's that. But also my larger goal and what I'd really like to do with the restaurant too is in addition to just the Azores or specific islands, Fayal or Peak or the Azores and in Portugal and even Madeira, my goal is to go outside of that and expand on that story and through my food help tell the story of Portuguese throughout history and include from the Portuguese diaspora and really explore flavors of Macanese cuisine and
absolutely
and
that'll
go
be a first, I think,
and from Goa
and
yes.
and from North Africa, from Mozambique, because if you to understand about Portuguese food, it was really, I always tell people, it's kind of the first kind of fusion cuisine because
I've said this all the time.
Yeah.
because the Portuguese were really the first ones to really start bringing in to Europe these different exotic spices and ingredients, and as a result, the Portuguese took ingredients from some of those regions to, you were talking about citrus and rice, and they all became part of these travels and during the colonization process of the Portuguese taking ingredients to certain places, like taking hot peppers to India and bringing back spices such as, cinnamon and clove and some of the ingredients that are still very common used in Portuguese cuisine. So my goal beyond just doing, Azorean food or is really, I want to do Portuguese food and not set a limit on or a definition of what Portuguese food is, because it's so broad and there's so many opportunities to explore different flavors and techniques and really help tell the story of the Portuguese history through food.
Yes, that's beautiful. Beautifully said, honey.
So
I can't wait to meet you.
When is Umakaza opening, Tomo?
So Umakaza is it's getting closer and closer. There's been times in this process where I really felt like I was out on an island by myself, pun intended. Um, and it's in kind of this day and age to have an ambitious project of this nature in San Francisco, it's just from a financial standpoint,
It's huge, yeah.
requires a lot of work and networking with people, and I absolutely can't do it by myself. And I have a fantastic group of investors that are backing me and still looking to get more to fund the project completely. But I'm at the point where the light's at the end of the tunnel, and it's going to happen, and I hope to be open at some point in August of this year, 2016.
Oh, beautiful.
That'll be perfect timing then for this podcast if we publish then.
Yes,
yeah, that'd be great.
See, as we keep talking about going for me going out there, I have there's a lot of Portuguese out there, especially in the San Francisco area. And I've been asked to go out there a couple of times, and I just haven't decided on what's the best time to go. But now I know I have to wait till after August. Maybe it will be this fall that I'll be out there.
Yeah, fall's great too. Especially it's a good time of year here in San Francisco. It's always our summers are in October. It's like one of the warmest periods, but I mean, to be honest, I've been so fortunate to be in really to live in an area and immersed in such a strong culture, and there's always been Portuguese food from when I was a kid growing up too, and at the time, because during those years we're in Portugal, I was actually back for like a year or two. It's very complicated, but I pretty much spent my whole childhood from 1 till 12 in Fayal, but there's little moments where I was back here in the States, and I always remember places like Tamar and Pica-Pau, and I don't quite remember Little Portugal in downtown because I never went there myself, but my parents went, and so it's always been but I played on a soccer team for PAC, which was coached by Harold Vieira, who at the time owned Trade Right. So I remember Trade Right Market forever, and they were always selling Portuguese products. And so the community has always held this kind of held up these traditions and provided places where people could still eat the food. I'm in Sousa's. I mean, I'm like blanked on that, but Sousa's, Lionel Sousa was I just like so much like represented Portuguese culture and always provided this place for people to try the food. And now we're very, very fortunate. The La Salette's been around for well over a decade now, and Chef Manuel has done great work there. Luis Lorenz at Bacalhau Grill in San Jose, he kind of took that and made it a place where the community could go back to during a time where it was kind of going away, and such a good job there. And all the different bands and clubs, they all have kitchens and they cook great food and they share it with people. And now Adega just opened in San Jose as well. And Chef David over there is doing a great job, and the Carreiras, they've done an amazing job with that place. So it's really, sometimes people ask me, I think there's a little part of our culture which I still think is pretty true, and a lot of, I guess, immigrant cultures. But there's it's like mshirikad.
Oh, mshirikad.
Yeah. So if you know what that is, I've had people like go, oh, like what do you, how do you feel about Adega opening in this? And I feel like they wanted me to be like, oh, I'm going to be this or I'm going to be that, and I'm like, no, I'm so excited because the more people there are doing it, and I think we're so different in so many ways. All these different places that I've named, from La Salette to Adega to Bacalhau Grill to they're so different, and because they each have their own story and history, and people cooking the food that have a different point of view. But I think at the end of the day, it's so good to get more exposure for our community and culture, because at the end of the day, here's what I tell people. I think food, especially in the United States, is the biggest kind of foot in the door for people to explore cultures. So I've personally never been to Vietnam or Thailand, but I've my first introductions to those cultures were via the food. And I think the more we can do that with Portuguese food, it helps open the door for people to pique their interest
Absolutely.
in Portuguese culture beyond
Absolutely.
just the food after they're comfortable with it.
Well, the funny thing is you're saying all this, and Angela and I have had these conversations on our podcast before, and that is we feel the same exact way as you
Yeah.
do, and that is the more the merrier, the more that people. I want us to succeed. I want every Portuguese restaurant to succeed. And how someone was saying to you, Mishqueiro, for you too, to find out about others. I have that same question about other Portuguese cookbook authors. And I feel the same way as you. And that is the more the better. I want more people to know about our food out there. We're like the most well-kept secret. We're the oldest culinary. We are the oldest among the food and what we do and how long we've done it. But we're so well kept secret. It's just like it needs to get out there, and it has to go. I mean, once people realize who we are and what we do, no, we're not Spanish food. No, we're not Italian food. No, we're not. But we have influences that come from so much that our food is amazing, and we've always been very shy about it. I think that's what it is. We've been very like, we're going to just assimilate to wherever we are. We have our pockets, but we're going to stay quiet. And I think the next generation of us coming aboard are like, hell no. We're going to be telling everybody who we are. And I love that. I love it, love it, love it, love it.
Yeah, I mean, even for me personally, and just to open a restaurant in San Francisco, it's an amazing opportunity, even just to do something that is not offered in a huge city. Now, there's no Portuguese food, so it's very cool and niche. But yeah, like even Jorge Mendes in New York, I've been to Aldeia, I've been to Lupulu.
He does a great job.
He does a great job, and he has his own vision, his own
Yep.
way he does things. Even
He's a sweetheart.
when I was younger and just a cook at the time, but I traveled to Toronto, and I remember Adega in Toronto being, such a kind of known as doing Portuguese food really well. So I've traveled there, and if there's I try to eat as many Portuguese restaurants in the United States as I can. There's actually, I found a little spot recently in Jersey City called Broa, Broa. And it's
Brua. Okay.
it's in Jersey City. It's just on the other side of Manhattan, like when you take the path.
Yes.
So
I know exactly.
And he used to cook in Newark, but now he opened this little spot, and I went there and met the chef, and he's such a cool guy, and he's built like such a little, and it's a very like a little Tashka. But my whole point being is that, yeah, the more the merrier. Bring it on, because the more people do Portuguese food and tell their story, the more people are going to be comfortable with it or exposed to it, and it just creates a bigger demand. So I'm very excited for the future of Portuguese cuisine in North America, in the United States, and Canada.
Nice.
The Portuguese chefs in Portugal, José Vilés and kind of his contemporaries, are taking Portuguese food in such a cool direction. And so it's just a very exciting time for Portuguese food. I feel honored and privileged to be a part of that. Portuguese wines and Portugal itself is kind of coming onto the global map, onto the global radar.
Another well-kept secret.
Yeah, there have been a lot more articles about Portuguese wine and Portuguese food in mainstream publications, so it's awesome to see the awareness getting out there. And there's so many written by non-Portuguese people, which is awesome, right? So, and the thing, Antelmo, that you were mentioning all the different restaurants, or the three that you mentioned here in the Bay Area. What I love too is that all the food on all the menus, they're all different, right? So
absolutely,
it's not like there's bacalhau com maçã on every single one, or carne de porco con jana on every single. It's all different. It's all a different style, which is back to the point that you both were making about that it's different. It's the first fusion. It's there's so many different ways to make the same dish that we've talked about in the past. And I just want to do one more shout out to We have to give a shout out to Grub Steak in San Francisco. Because
Yeah, grub steak.
They've held the torch. They've held the torch in San Francisco for a long time, even though they're not a Portuguese restaurant, and we are actually maybe in danger of losing them. But and then we also have St. George Cafe, which has some sandwiches and desserts and stuff.
Oh
but,
no, St. George, St. George Cafe is great. I've been there definitely, like when I'm craving a tosta mista and a galal.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
like Andrea's so nice, and she's been to some of my pop-ups. And this is the thing, and this is what people don't understand about the support that's out there. The Carreiras, they've been to my pop-ups and supported me in my endeavor. I've done a pop-up at Bacalhau Grill and cooked with Luis and had his support in my in what I'm doing in my project. Andrea, in some of my early pop-ups, she came and showed her support. Manuel's been to, when I was cooking at other restaurants, and he's come in and eaten my food at different places and always supported me in what I do. So I think what people don't realize is that I think he actually just opened a new place called Tashka, which I stopped by the other day in Sonoma, and it's fantastic because it's all these little plates, and it's really like the Tashka style of eating, which I love. So, but all these people are passionate, and they're doing their own thing, and like you said, it's all different, from grub steak, which I've definitely had called verde at 3 a.m.
Yep.
Sometimes at 3 a.m. you've had copo mais, and you need called verde, and a grub steak was that safe haven for me. But so all these places of like play, I respect everybody so much for risking it and giving it a shot and doing what they're doing. I think I have a very unique place in that as well, and I think I offer a different perspective. I think I offer a very contemporary, modern San Francisco Bay Area approach, because like I said, I've been surrounded by amazing chefs and influenced by some of the chefs that I know, that I'm fortunate enough to know personally, from some of the best restaurants, and not just San Francisco, but in the country and in the world. And so their influence on me helps kind of shape and guide the way my vision for Portuguese food is. So I guess at the end of the day, this project is so personal for me. I'm so excited to share it with the community, but even as much or even more excited to share it with people outside of the community, because I want to introduce them to what I am so passionate about and I love so much, and that's Portugal, the Azores, Portuguese people, Portuguese culture, and Portuguese food.
Love it. What a great way. I can't
think of a better way to end the interview on. I mean, we could keep going if you want.
Oh.
I know you have somewhere to go, but that was.
I didn't request a late checkout today, so.
This was a wonderful interview. Thank you so much for doing this for us. This was wonderful.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, and it's such a pleasure to hear your voice and to meet you. I'm definitely familiar with your work, and Angela, thank you for thinking of me and providing me the opportunity to come on here with you guys.
Of course.
And you yourself have done so much for the community and keeping the Portuguese community and culture moving forward here. So I thank you for your efforts and everything you've done. And I think the point with whether it's writing a book or doing this podcast or me cooking Portuguese food or you being involved with the Dia de Portugal, it's really about just people being passionate, but also being like, it's okay now to share our culture. I think for so many years people felt like you had to assimilate, right? That was like the immigrant thing, like
that is
like to assimilate and let's not stick out the thumb that sticks out. Let's assimilate and become part of American culture. And I think that's why you had like a strong sense of community within the communities, but outside of that, I think there's much to be desired in the way of sharing it with mainstream America, to say. So I'm really excited that as we move forward in 2016 and we have first generation, second, third, even fourth generation people going out there and sharing their pride in Portuguese culture with the rest of the world is really amazing.
Love it.
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you. Thank
you so much,
sweetheart.
Antelmo.
All right, thank you guys. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day. And
Yeah, and I can't wait to meet you. I cannot wait to meet you.
Well,
I cannot wait.
You're gonna have to come out here in the fall, and maybe if the restaurant's open, I'd love to have you. We'll do a special dinner where we can cook together and make
That
it
would be
open to the public and have a fun day exploring Azorean food together.
That would be wonderful. I can't wait, honey.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Telma. Have a safe trip home.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Thank you.
Até logo.
Até logo.
logo.
Até a próxima.
Se Deus quiser.
Se Deus quiser, sim, senhor.
Vai com Deus.
Bye.
Vai com Deus. You're so cute.
Bye, ladies.
Bye. Bye. Oh my goodness.
So is he just the cutest or what?
Oh my God.
So and passionate about everything.
He is so passionate and he feels the same way we do.
I know.
So it's one thing how, we've talked to so many people here who are just as passionate as we are. But I mean, he really got into it. Like you could just, you could feel it. Like, and I know he's out, in another part of the country here, but I could feel it here in New England, how much he felt about it. And it's exactly that. Oh,
yeah.
God.
He's an old soul. So I don't even think he's 40. And
really?
And it's so, what I love is when you see someone young like that who is really that committed and has that kind of passion and is just such a great example for other youth in the community, right? Because he really has done some amazing things, and he's very well known, and he's done he when he was working at La Salette, he would do food demonstrations at the Dia de Portugal festival, and he's done like custom dinners for other events and things like that. I love seeing good examples for our youth to follow.
Yes.
It's so important to have those.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, so, I hope everyone who's listening enjoyed this as much as Angela and I did. That's for sure.
And he's a big teddy bear. When you see him, you're just going to want to give him a big hug.
I love it. I love it. No, this was awesome. This was an awesome interview. And I'm so glad we were able to, because I know he's a busy man. So that he was able to take the time to talk to us, that in itself, again, like all of our previous guests who are so busy, to take the time to do this just means how, it just goes to show you how great they are,
Yep, absolutely. So, Maria, I did want to share one thing with you that has nothing to do with the interview that we just did.
Oh my goodness, what is it?
So, I think I posted a picture on Facebook that I tried your cebolada recipe and the poached fish.
Yes.
Right? Oh my God, Maria. It was so good.
Isn't it? Is it a good recipe?
I can't even tell you. I've made it 3 times.
Oh.
There. Because it's so easy. You told me it was easy, and I'm like, no, it's not. Nothing's that easy, but it really is.
And it's simple. See, the key thing to making something that's delicious does not need too many things to go overboard. If you use, like he was just saying, like, the fresh ingredients, the basics of little, just like, your onions, your tomatoes, sometimes peppers, depending of what you have also in, what I mean? What's in season, what you have around you. And then your fresh fish on top of that. I mean, how great.
So I'll just, because I actually know the recipe by heart now because it's so easy. So I'll just share it with our listeners. It's so easy. So you take, I guess it depends on how much you want to make, but take at least like 4 onions. I used yellow onion, slice them up, and you could just you don't have to dice them, just slice them up. And then I think I used 4 or 5 tomatoes. And one time I used the vine ripe tomatoes, and then another time we used Roma tomatoes because that's what I made it for my parents, and that's what they had. Just chop those up, and then So I will tell you, I did Google other recipes just because, like I said, sometimes I like to to compare what people do. And
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was your recipe or another one that said to remove the seeds from the tomato.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So remove the seeds from the tomato, chop those up like, kind of big chunks, cover a large pan, cover the whole pan in olive oil,
Yeah.
throw in the onions and let those caramelize essentially in the oil until they get like really well cooked and brown, I guess. Right? Not super brown, but
No, a translucent.
translucent,
A little
yeah.
bit more than translucent. Yeah,
Right.
not till like a golden, very golden color.
Yeah.
Not brown. You don't want to caramelize.
Brown. No, we don't want to burn them.
No.
So I put the rock salt to taste over the onions, and then I throw in the tomatoes, all the tomatoes, and then I have used both fresh chopped garlic, and then also you can buy the jars of the minced garlic.
Yes.
So I've used both. Fresh garlic obviously is always best. Throw in a bunch of that. So I tend to use like a whole head just because my husband really loves garlic. So I used a lot, but I think your recipe calls for, I think 4 or 5
Yes,
cloves.
because
Yeah.
I do like garlic too. But
Yeah. So throw that in there, and then a cup of white wine, and I used Vin Verde because that's
Nice.
that. And then also used chopped up roasted red pepper.
Nice. Yeah,
And-
you can add all those things in there. Yep.
Yeah, and so at my grocery store, so we have a Rayleigh's out here, and then a Safeway. I hadn't gone out to Trade Right yet to get it, so there was a jar of it. It was Italian roasted red pepper in oil. So I used those and I chopped them up. But then I went over to Trade Right and I actually bought a jar of crushed red pepper. So I'll be using that next time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So anyway, so then you cover it and you just let that puppy simmer
Yep.
for like half
That's
an
a good
hour,
way to say it.
right?
You let it simmer. Yep. Mhm.
And I think you even said in your recipe, like it takes that amount of time for the tomatoes to break down and release the juices. Because you look at it and you think, how is this going to like simmer down and create a sauce, right? But it does. It does. And then, so after half an hour, it's all simmered and I stirred it a couple times. And then you just lay the fish right on top, maybe sprinkle a little salt on the fish,
Yeah.
cover it up. And in a few minutes, it's done. And then you serve it and you pour the sablada over the fish. And
Yes.
Maria, I swear, it's like, I'm like, I want to have everybody over for dinner now because I'm like, you gotta have this. It's so good.
And and it looks, when you serve it, my mom would do that. That was a quick fish dish, especially in the summertime when we had tons of tomatoes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so that was always then. And in the wintertime when we didn't have it, we could buy the canned tomatoes. You know what I mean?
Right.
But in the summertime, it was definitely that we had sabladas a lot more often because of all the tomatoes we had at home in our garden. But it's a fast, quick, and very healthy. It is healthy.
Yeah.
It's so healthy.
And you know what I love about that? So I like onions, but sometimes it's kind of like, sometimes I like them, sometimes I don't. It kind of depends on how you cook them, like, or it depends if it's, red onions in a salad versus white onions somewhere else. Anyway, but when it cooks so much. They're so tender and sweet.
Yes.
Like I could just eat a spoonful.
Yes.
And that's not like me to eat a spoonful of onion at all, let me tell you. So yummy. So then I also read in another recipe that you could serve it over beef. So I made another batch and we served it over steak and it was really just as good, but I actually think I like the fish better.
Yeah. Now for breakfast or for a brunch. Now let me tell you this. Let me give you this now. Now instead of doing it with wine, you could use you could do water. You can add water to it, or a chicken broth if you wanted to.
Okay.
To it, and eliminate the wine. Do everything else like you were doing, but eliminate the wine. Or you could add it if you're doing brunch. Whatever.
Okay.
And because heck, we have mimosas for brunch, so why not have wine in it too? And instead of laying out like you do your fish, you would open like little indents in the onion and tomato sauce that you've just created. Kind of make like little indents, and you break an egg in those indents.
Oh my gosh.
And then you're gonna let it cook a little. Still bring it up to just let it simmer away a little. Cover that up. Now you're poaching those eggs.
God, that's
You're going to
brilliant.
poach
That is
those eggs.
Oh
So
my
then
God, that's brilliant.
my husband and I like it so that when I like a runny, I like it a little runny when my eggs. The yolk, yes.
The yolk, yeah, okay.
So,
Me too.
so I do it to the point where it's to that consistency where the white is cooked, but the yolk itself is still a little runny. And because when you scoop that up, now you're going to scoop that up and you're going to put that on your plate.
Put it on top of toast or something.
And you just,
oh my God.
yes. And then you cut that yolk into it. It becomes part of that sauce. And it just makes it so rich. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm making that tomorrow. I have to make it. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. It's so, because I love eggs. It's one of those foods.
Yes.
I love eggs.
And the combination of tomatoes with the eggs and the onions and the garlic and all of that, it's just, that's something we like. That's something we do for some weekends.
Oh, that is delicious.
That's one of my husband's favorites.
Yes. Oh, that's definitely on the menu for this weekend. Oh my God. So I'm going to put a call out to our listeners. If you make this recipe, please take a picture and post it. We want to see.
Yes.
We want to see what you've been creating in your kitchen and if you love it as much as we do, because
yes,
my gosh.
Yes. And the other thing we need to remind our listeners out there to please go on to, to iTunes and to SoundCloud.
Yep.
And leave a review.
Yep.
And just let us know what you think of our podcasts.
Yeah, when you leave a review, it actually helps other people find our podcast. So we certainly want to reach as many people as we can. And again, share our story, share the wonderful cuisine that is Portuguese food, and
that's right.
And also share the Portuguese experience with as many people as we can. So please leave a review.
Yes. Thank you.
And
this has been fun.
This has been so fun. It's always fun. And
it's always fun.
And there's so many more people that we need to talk to and so many more things we need to talk about.
Yeah.
I can't even, the list just goes on and on and on. So many times in our conversation with Telmo, they would bring a topic and I'm like, oh my, that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole, yes.
That's a whole other podcast.
Exactly.
We got to write that down and have that as a topic. So,
yeah.
But no, this has been fun. And so yeah, everybody, if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely subscribe and get your friends and family to subscribe and leave us some comments. Actually, that's one thing we need to start doing, Maria, is reading the comments.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because we've gotten some really, really nice messages from our listeners. So thank you very, very much for those of you who have sent in a message, saying thank you and that you like listening.
Read them. We do read them.
We do read them. We try to respond to every single one. But I think that's it.
That's it. We're done for today. We're done.
Hey.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. And again, do all the things that we've just asked you to do. That would be great. And até a próxima.
Até a próxima. Have a good weekend, Maria.
You too, honey. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thanks again for listening to our Portuguese Table podcast.
If you haven't subscribed yet, you can do so on SoundCloud or iTunes.
And all episodes can be found on our website at www.ourportuguesetable.com.
You can also reach us at feedback@ourportuguesetable.com with comments, questions, or suggestions.
Até a próxima!